Welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Meet Kirsten. Chapter 3, Across the New Land. The next day, Kirsten and her family started a long journey across the country to Minnesota. Not even Papa could guess how long the trip would take. The agent will help us find our way and we'll see what happens, he says. At the top of the path in the park, Kirsten met Marta. We're leaving today, Kirsten said. Are you going to? Marta shook her head. Not until tomorrow, she replied. Oh no, I was so sure we'd be traveling together, exclaimed Kirsten. Me too, Marta answered softly. Are you going to take another ship now, Kirsten? No, I think we're going to take the train, Kirsten said. What do you think a train looks like, Marta? I don't know exactly. My father says it'll make a loud noise and a lot of smoke. Might be afraid of trains, Marta said. Kirsten grinned. Noise won't hurt us, she said, and Papa says a train is like many wagons traveling together. Maybe you'll get on our train tomorrow. Wouldn't that be lucky? Marta caught her low lip between her teeth. Or maybe we'll never see each other again, she said. Kirsten took her friend's hand. But your family's going to Minnesota just like mine is. We're sure to meet on the way. At least I hope so, she added. I'll miss you, Kirsten, Marta muttered. Kirsten looked down at her dusty boots. Saying goodbye to the people she loved most was the hardest thing in the world to do. She didn't want Marta to see the tears that stung her eyes, so she took a deep breath before she said, Marta, I'll tell you what my grandmother said to me when we left Sweden. More said, when you're lonely, look at the sun. Remember that we all see the same sun. Do you do that? Marta asked. Do you look at the sun and think of your grandmother? When I miss More, I look at the sun and pray for her, Kirsten said. Now Marta managed a small smile. Then when I miss you, I'll look at the sun. What will you do the same? Yes, and I'll say a prayer too. I will. I'll say, God bless Marta. I'll say a prayer too, Marta agreed, and I'll be looking for you everywhere. Kirsten sighed. She was going to another new place. It seemed to her like she would always feel like a Swedish girl who was far from home. Home, that's the place where you're happy, a place where you belong. How can America ever really be my home, she thought. Then she followed her parents down the path to meet the agent and 10 new families. First there was a fierce roar and a hiss, and then the long scream of a whistle. Kirsten's heart flip-flopped. Maybe Marta was right to be afraid of trains. The engine looked like a black iron horse on fire. Smoke boiled up from the giant smokestack. Live sparks and red coals showered down with the smoke. Kirsten stayed close to Mama, but Mama was worried too. She squeezed Kirsten's hand extra hard as they climbed aboard. Inside, the train was so hot it felt ready to explode. There was a cold grit on the floor and cinders in the air. Kirsten could hardly get her breath. She saw the windows had been nailed shut. The agent said the train would feel safer this way. Papa and Lars stood near the door. Kirsten was squeezed behind Mom and Peter on a bench under the windows. Trunks and bundles were piled up in front of them. Kirsten was used to being crowded, but now she felt like if she were packing up their big trunk. Are we there yet? Peter complained. Hush, we haven't even moved, Mama said. Some of the old folks closed their eyes, and Kirsten knew they were praying the train wouldn't catch on fire. Then it started to move. It bumped and lurched and screeched over the metal rails. Peter hid his face in Mama's lap. The men were quiet, and even Lars' eyes were wide. The train began to huff and chug. Through the small window, Kirsten saw houses and trees moving backward. The huffing and chugging grew louder, and the trees went by very quickly. Lars called out, We're going faster than a horse can run. Faster than the fastest horse can run. Dizzy, Kirsten closed her eyes. The train groaned and swayed. Even though she could see, she felt the speed in which it carried them west. For a day, the train moved through fields and forests. When they stopped for water, a man from the railroad opened the door for a few minutes, but the hot air stayed and hard to breathe. Everyone was quiet, dazed by the heat. Now and then Mama opened the food trunk, but not even Lars was hungry. When Kirsten caught his eye, he gave her a sad smile. She knew he hated being trapped inside even more than she did. At last they reached Chicago. A hot, strong wind blew dirt up from the streets, but Kirsten didn't care how dirty it was. Here she could walk again and run. Papa said in a few days they would join a big group of pioneers traveling to the Mississippi River in wagons. But first they would rest here in a boarding house. It was good to be in a house again, although this boarding house reminded Kirsten of the big barn in Sweden. The long, open sleeping room upstairs was like the loft where Papa stored hay, except it was filled row after row of beds and crowded people's belongings. In the kitchen there were tubs for Mama to wash their clothes in. When the laundry was finished, Mama sent Kirsten and Peter out in the backyard to get some sun. Kirsten found herself on a long porch filled with children. She was used to smiling at other girls, wishing she spoke their language so they could talk to each other. But now she heard someone call her name. Kirsten Larson! It was Marta, her thick braids swinging. She ran from between the rows of shirts and underwear drawing the clothesline. She grabbed Kirsten's shoulders. Kirsten grabbed Marta's waist, and they whirled and whirled. You're here, you're here, Kirsten repeated over and over. So are you, Marta answered over and over again. That evening, Marta's family sat down with Kirsten's family for roast pork and potatoes. Marta's father said, We're back with our friends again. We'll stay together now until we get to Minnesota. Under the table, Kirsten and Marta held hands. Kirsten couldn't believe her luck. At last, America was starting to feel like home, with good food, a real bed to sleep in, and best of all, friends. That's the end of that chapter. See you later.